Hey everyone, and welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're talking about something that I think is super important for anyone out there, running a nonprofit, or even just interested in how these organizations, like how they actually survive.
Yeah, keeping the lights on.
Yeah, it's like you're out there trying to change the world, which is amazing, but you gotta pay the bills too.
Exactly. And that's where the idea of social entrepreneurship comes in.
Right. And that's what's so cool about the deep dive we're doing today. We're looking at this research study on Canadian charities, and they're specifically focusing on nonprofits that are already doing this whole social entrepreneurship thing,
Yeah.
earning at least like 30% of their revenue by selling something.
Yeah, it's a model that's becoming more and more common, but there's still so much to learn about how to make it work.
Totally. And what makes this research even more interesting is the timing of it. They looked at data from 2009 to 2012. So
Yeah.
right smack dab in the middle of
A major economic downturn.
huge recession.
Yeah.
So, these findings are like extra relevant for anyone trying to navigate like uncertain times.
Absolutely. When resources are tight, you got to get creative.
Right. So let's say you're running like a small community arts program.
Yeah.
Right. And things are tough, donations are down, but you're like, no way I'm going to keep offering those free art classes for kids. So you start thinking bigger, like maybe going international could be the answer.
Yeah, you think bigger market, more opportunities, right? Got to spread those wings.
Exactly. But here's the thing, and this is where this research like blows my mind.
Hmm.
They actually found a pretty weak link between going global and actually diversifying your revenue, especially for nonprofits that are already like super efficient.
Yeah, that one surprised me too. You'd think going international would automatically lead to more revenue streams, but it's not always that straightforward.
So why is that? Why wouldn't it just be like, boom, more countries, more money?
Well, you got to think about it this way. Imagine you have this amazing nonprofit that trains teachers in Africa, right? Expanding to like South America might seem like the next logical step.
Sure, broader reach, more impact.
Right. But what if your training materials are only available in Africa? Or your staff's expertise is like super specific to the African context? That's what the study talks about, this idea of international interdependence.
I see. It's like you can't just plop your model down anywhere. It's got to be a good fit.
Exactly. And if you're already running a tight ship, maximizing every penny you spend those international ventures, got to be carefully planned. You don't want to spread yourself too thin.
That makes a lot of sense. So maybe going global is more of a long-term goal. But what about like right now? What can a nonprofit do to diversify in the short term? What about offering more stuff here at home?
You're talking about program diversification.
Yes.
And on that front, the research is a lot more like what we'd expect. There's strong evidence that diversifying your programs leads to more revenue diversification.
So if our little community arts program starts offering workshops for adults too, or partners with businesses to do team building stuff,
You got more revenue streams?
it's like diversifying their portfolio, just like a smart investor.
It is. And there are tons of great examples out there. Think about Big Brothers, Big Sisters of America. They have all these different programs tailored to different needs and age groups, which helps them tap into way more funding sources.
That's awesome. Okay, so we're starting to see how this diversification thing can actually work. But there's another piece of this puzzle that I think is like super important. We were talking about efficiency in nonprofits. It's not just about like cutting costs. It's about making sure that the money is actually reaching the people you're trying to help.
Exactly. It's impact per dollar. That's the name of the game.
And the study found that efficiency, it's like this secret weapon. It can make all the difference when it comes to diversification.
It's huge. Think about it from a donor's perspective. If they see that you're already super efficient using every dollar wisely, they're more likely to trust you with new projects, whether it's a new program or a partnership overseas.
It's like you're proving yourself. You're saying, look, we're already doing amazing things. Imagine what we could do with even more support.
Exactly. And there are a few reasons why efficiency is such a powerful driver for diversification.
Like what?
Well, for starters, efficient nonprofits tend to be more adaptable. They can roll with the punches when things change, whether it's the funding landscape or unexpected challenges in a new program.
They're nimble.
Exactly. And they're also really good at learning from their experiences and applying those lessons to new initiatives.
Yeah.
So they're not just repeating the same mistakes, they're constantly evolving.
Oh, I see. So efficiency isn't just about being cheap. It's about being smart and strategic.
Right. And it can also help to combat some of the negative perceptions that people sometimes have about nonprofits engaging in business activities.
Yeah, like the whole idea that they're selling out or something.
Exactly. If you can show that you're using your resources effectively and that most of your funding is going directly to programs, It builds trust and transparency.
It's like you're saying, hey, we're not in this for the money.
Yeah,
We're here to make a difference.
couldn't have said it better myself. And speaking of making a difference, there's another layer to this whole diversification thing that we need to talk about. Remember how this study looked at a period that included a major economic downturn? Well, they actually did some additional analysis, and what they found was pretty amazing.
Okay, I'm all ears. What did they find?
They found that revenue diversification itself is linked to nonprofits surviving longer and achieving higher revenue growth.
Whoa, hold on. So it's not just about surviving tough times. It's about coming out stronger on the other side?
Exactly. It's like diversification gives you this resilience, this ability to weather the storm and come out swinging.
That is so cool. Okay, so we've talked about how going global can be tricky. Program diversification is a good bet, and efficiency is key. But there's still so much more to uncover in this research.
There is. This study is packed with insights.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to take a little breather. Let all this information sink in, and then we'll be back in a flash to continue our deep dive. Don't go anywhere.
See you soon.
Okay, we're back. And, as we keep digging into this nonprofit diversification thing, I can't help but think about this whole debate about whether nonprofits should even be, earning money.
Yeah, it's a touchy subject for some.
Yeah, like some people think they should stick to grants and donations and maybe, bake sales and stuff.
The classic fundraising methods.
Exactly. But this research dives right into that. It actually focuses on nonprofits that are already earning a good chunk of their revenue from sales.
Yeah.
So it's not saying that all nonprofits should become businesses.
Right. It's more like providing a roadmap for those who are already on that path.
It's like, okay, you're doing this social entrepreneurship thing. Here's how to make it work.
Exactly. It's about giving them the tools to make smart decisions based on data, not just intuition.
Evidence-based decision-making. I love that. And it's not pretending that diversification is easy.
Oh, no, it's definitely not a magic bullet. It takes work planning strategy, and you got to be able to adapt.
It's a process.
Mm.
And you can't just pick one strategy and expect it to solve all your problems.
Right. It's all about how these different strategies work together, how they influence each other. It's about the big picture.
It's a whole ecosystem.
Exactly. And speaking of the big picture, I think it's important to talk about how all of this connects back to the nonprofit's mission.
Right, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, making a difference in the world.
Absolutely. And this study really emphasizes that diversification efforts should always support that core mission.
It's not about making money just for the sake of making money. It's about having the resources to do good work.
Exactly. And doing it sustainably, so you can keep making that impact for years to come.
So it's not just financial sustainability. It's about mission sustainability, too.
I like that mission sustainability. It's a great way to put it.
Okay, so we've got that mission focus.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious about the different types of revenue sources and how they might, play into different diversification strategies.
That's an interesting question. And while the study doesn't go into super detail on that, it does give us a framework for thinking about it. You know how they break down revenue sources into those different buckets, like earned income, government funding, charitable donations.
Right. Those categories help you see where the money is coming from.
Exactly. And if we look at those sources in relation to the different diversification strategies, we can start to see some interesting patterns emerge.
Oh, like what?
Well, let's say you have a nonprofit that relies heavily on government funding. They might find that program diversification opens up new opportunities for grants.
It's like expanding their menu of options for funders.
Exactly. But if you're an organization that depends mostly on individual donations, well, internationalization might help you reach new donor networks overseas.
So you got to be strategic and tailor your approach to the types of funding you're going for.
Precisely. There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
And that's what makes this research so helpful. It gives you the tools to think critically and make those informed decisions.
It's like a decision-making framework.
I like that. But, it's one thing to understand these concepts, but it's another to actually put them into practice. So what are some key takeaways for people who are actually working in nonprofits?
Oh, I think one of the most important things is to take a step back and assess your current state of diversification and efficiency.
Like a nonprofit checkup.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You got to ask yourself, how diversified are our revenue streams right now? How efficient are our operations? And how does all this align with our long-term goals and our mission?
It's like taking inventory before you start making big plans.
Exactly. You got to know where you stand before you can figure out where you're going.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So this research is basically saying diversification isn't a one-time fix. It's an ongoing process.
Absolutely. You have to constantly be evaluating, adapting, and making sure your strategies are still aligned with your context.
It's about being flexible and responsive to change.
Precisely. And, as we're wrapping up this part of our conversation, I'm struck by how much this study emphasizes the importance of organizational capabilities.
Yeah, it's not just about having a great strategy. It's about having the infrastructure and the skills to actually execute it.
Exactly. Nonprofit leaders need to invest in building those capabilities, whether it's through staff training, leadership development, or streamlining operations.
It's about creating a strong foundation for sustainable growth.
Precisely. You got to have the right building blocks in place.
And on that note of building a strong foundation, I think it's time for a quick break. We'll be right back to wrap up our deep dive into nonprofit diversification thing. Stay tuned. Okay, we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dive into this whole nonprofit diversification thing. One thing that's really sticking with me is how this research connects like strategy money and actually making a difference.
It shows that it's not just some theoretical concept. There are real tangible benefits to diversifying your revenue.
Yeah. It's not just about like spreading out your risk and hoping for the best. This study shows that it can actually help nonprofits survive longer and like bring in more money.
Exactly. It takes the guesswork out of it and gives you solid evidence to base your decisions on.
And what I really appreciate is that it's not just talking about these like huge organizations with tons of resources. Even small nonprofits can benefit from this stuff.
Oh, absolutely. The principles are the same, whether you're a tiny community group or a global charity.
It's about building that financial stability no matter what your size.
Exactly. Having multiple sources of income means you're not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Okay, so as we're wrapping up, I want to leave our listeners with like a final thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
We've talked about all these factors that influence diversification, right? Going global, expanding programs, being efficient. But what about the age of nonprofit? Do you think a brand new organization might approach this differently than one that's been around for like decades?
That's a really interesting question. And it's not something that the research specifically addresses, but it's definitely worth thinking about. You could imagine that a younger nonprofit might be a little more willing to experiment and try new things.
Yeah, they're still figuring things out, so they're probably more open to taking risks.
Right, whereas an older, more established organization might have more resources, but they might also be a little more cautious.
It's like they have more to lose.
Exactly. And then there's the whole question of existing partnerships and collaborations. How do those play into the diversification strategy?
It's like this whole network of relationships that you have to consider.
Exactly. It's about understanding that ecosystem and figuring out how to leverage those connections for growth and sustainability.
I love that. So to all our listeners out there, we challenge you to take what we've discussed today and think about how it applies to your own work. Whether you're a seasoned nonprofit leader or just starting out, ask yourself some tough questions. How are you approaching diversification? What's working? What could be improved?
And don't be afraid to think outside the box. There are so many creative and innovative ways to diversify your revenue and build a more sustainable future for your organization.
That's what it's all about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into nonprofit diversification.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep learning, keep innovating, and keep making a positive impact on the world.